Want to feel old? It's been nearly a decade since Mario Kart 8 was released. I want you to really think about how long that is. How does it compare to your life? What have you done? And how have you changed as a person since 2014? Perhaps you graduated high school, or possibly even college. Maybe you've had relationships, have gotten married, or even have had kids. Or maybe you weren't even born yet. Probably don't watch this video then. The point is, Mario Kart 8, released in 2014, is still the newest console Mario Kart game, and is being supported to this very day with new content. This game has had many different phases, from being released initially to save the struggling Wii U, to serving as Nintendo's first genuine attempt at DLC, and making sure that the Switch had more games than Breath of the Wild near its launch. Its long lifespan is well deserved. Mario Kart has always been an appealing formula for a wide array of gamers, ranging from the casual to the degenerates. I'm sure I don't have to sit here and tell you in depth what Mario Kart is. If you really don't know, first of all, get out of the rock you're living under, but I'll give a brief rundown. It's simple. You drive around a track, which usually has 3 laps or sections, playing as Mario characters on a wacky track and throwing chaotic items. Like with anything summarized in one sentence, there's a bit more depth to it, which we'll go into as the video goes on. But take note of how simple it is at its core. Its ease of access is the main reason Mario Kart Wii and Mario Kart 8 have both sold an almost unbelievable amount of copies. And with Mario Kart 8 having 60 million combined copies sold between the Wii U and Switch versions, you can argue Mario Kart 8 is Nintendo's most relevant game of modern times. It's pretty rare that a game with this long of a lifespan occurs in the realm of Nintendo, to tell you the truth. Most of the time, a game from a given franchise, whether that console succeeded or failed, you could expect a new iteration on the next one. Following Mario Kart 8 on Wii U though, the Nintendo Switch was actually the first Nintendo console, handhelds included, since the original Game Boy not to receive a new Mario Kart game, or the Virtual Boy if you count consoles that were created for tax returns. I think it's best if we start this video by looking at where it all began. That first release of Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U. In this video, we're gonna work our way up, look at and document the progression and evolution of this long-living game over the past 9 years, because this game has had a lifespan that only a few games truly have had. Alright, well with all that said, let's talk about Mario Kart 8. Starting it off by talking about Mario Kart 7. Yeah, I know. But look, talking about Mario Kart 7 is important because it gives us some pivotal context, as Mario Kart 8 is basically just a new and improved TM version of that. These brother and sister releases were actually very common in the 3DS and Wii U era, where the games released between the two would often share a lot of similarities or outright assets. For example, Mario 3D Land and Mario 3D World is probably the most infamous one, and of course there are much more blatant examples out there, such as Super Smash Bros. For Nintendo Wii U and for Nintendo 3DS, and less incidentally, direct ports occasionally. I've heard a lot of ranging discourse about Mario Kart 7 since it was released. Now look, I personally love this game, and I'm always surprised to hear people say they don't like it, or think it's one of the weaker Mario Kart games. How are you gonna sit there with a straight face and tell me that when Super Circuit exists? Here's the thing about Mario Kart 7 though. Like it or hate it, the game did take some monumental steps for the franchise. These are of course the underwater and flying sections, which are innovative and brand new to the kart racing genre. Vehicle transforming was a natural evolution for the Mario Kart series. Water was more or less the same, just a bit more sluggish and floatier, but flying was really cool, with gliding physics that felt very natural. And both editions opened up the game to some really genius track design. On top of that, 7 had added back the coins that had been missing since Mario Kart Super Circuit, which is one of my favorite additions, or re-additions, to the franchise. Each coin out of a possible 10 you can hold at once adds an ever so slight speed boost to your racer. If you get hit by anything or fall off the stage, you'll lose 3 of them. Now obviously there's a lot more that could be said about this game, but this video is not a review of 7. I just wanted to give you a view of what this game had added to the franchise because it's all relevant as it pertains to the future. Mario Kart 8 was first mentioned in January 2013 in a Nintendo Direct, back when they used to happen, but was later fully unveiled in all of its glory in E3 that year, back when those used to happen. And I genuinely do mean it when I say all of its glory. This game looked insane. Mario Kart 8 was essentially the game that Nintendo was hoping would save the Wii U, and the marketing push for this game was unprecedented as a result. They even ran a promotion where if you bought the game before the end of July, Nintendo would give you a free digital, retail Wii U game. That would never happen in today's era. And these weren't crappy choices or anything. It was an indeed $120 value for half the price. Things were dire, and you really can't blame Nintendo for taking this kind of a step, because if 3D Mario had failed to really save the console, well, Mario Kart was one of their final chances. Well, with all that said, I think it's time we check out the subject of the video.
I remember getting this game at launch at a friend's house, and it was just amazing. You know, I'm not going to build tension. This game was amazing.
Firstly, let's talk about the graphics. Now, it's 2023, and I would still say this game looks breathtaking. And this could easily pass for a game released today. So imagine how good this was in 2014.
It was so good that it literally blinded us.
The textures were unlike anything that had been seen in a Nintendo game up until this point. Even looking at the road, you know, gray pavement, it was a feast to the eyes. And that applied to nearly everything. Water, the grass, the snow. There's so much love and care sprinkled into the details too. For example, there are skid marks on the tracks following your first lap. Like, we literally can't ask Nintendo for anything ever again, okay? And whatever lighting engine this game uses is just downright breathtaking. Wario Mountain, for instance, really feels like a day you started skiing at 6 a.m. for. And I've never even gone skiing. Bone Dry Desert, despite being one of the weaker tracks, gives off such a unique atmosphere and vibe. And as someone who's been to San Francisco numerous times, I don't know what it is, but Toad Harbor, which is based off of that, just feels like you're right there. Nearly every track is complemented with detailed backgrounds too, with lots of cheering NPCs. Some of them come straight out of Paper Mario, but besides that, it's so wholesome to see these Toads and Yoshis dancing for you. Like, you know what? I'm not gonna let you down. There are signs and Easter eggs up the wazoo. I mean, I can't possibly mention them all, but there are so many references to past games and characters that honestly, Mario Kart 8 feels like a celebration to Mario as a whole. This is all helped by the fact that this game runs as smooth as butter. Dare I say microwave butter even. The Wii U version displays in 720p, which, like, look, the console's made out of peanuts and tape. It's a miracle it even got that. The frame rate, though, is abysmal. Just unforgivable. It's not even 60 FPS, it's 59. Be happy I'm using footage from the Switch version for this review, okay? But yeah, you know what? Who cares about graphics, okay?
Still blind.
The music in Mario Kart 8 was composed by a jazz band orchestra, which is a trend in Nintendo games dating back to Super Mario Galaxy, but it's the first time it made it over to a Mario Kart game, and my god, it really might be one of the best video game soundtracks ever made. So that means Jeff Keighley would not give them a game award. The signature sound is led by some really well-performed saxophones and trumpets, with the occasional electric guitar in the mix as well.
But while the presentation is great, I think there's something we're forgetting to talk about. Pink Gold Peach?
Anti-gravity. I mean, look, it's on the goddamn box art. This is Mario Kart 8's biggest, newest addition. Well, you know what? I can't even fault you if you didn't realize it looking at normal gameplay. Because to be honest, it doesn't always add that much to the actual track design. To some degree, it feels like this was added because this is a sequel to Mario Kart 7, which introduced 2 new types of racing. They panicked and said, we're canceling the laws of physics to make a third. The gameplay in anti-gravity isn't really that different. Basically, there will be these blue panels that turn your wheels into, I guess, magnets or something. Now, there are bumpers that make you spin and give you a little speed boost, which also occurs when you bump with another racer. There are smaller mechanics, like some of your stats sort of change, but it's basically just the regular racing still. You could call it a gimmick and only have a handful of Nintendo fanboys hunting your family down, sure, but I think there is a genuine change in how it shapes the track, albeit very slight. I think this is used most effectively when you're driving on a wall and your view perspective shifts horizontally. At that point, you have to adjust your controls ever so slightly, giving it a brief switch in gameplay, and it just feels unique. I can't lie though, I always do get a slight rush when I see players racing above me. Like, it's cute. I see you guys. To conclude anti-gravity, I'll say net it's a positive, but it's not some major game changer or anything like that.
Pink Gold Peach, on the other hand.
Alright, let's get this over with. Let's talk about the character roster. We're going in order of releases here, so we'll talk about characters added by DLC a bit later. But the base roster of Mario Kart 8 on Wii U, it kind of blows. Let's do a bit of math on just how much padding there really is here, because I really do think it's a huge detriment and waste of resources. Metal Mario is a clone of Mario. He was in 7, yeah, and I know he was technically in Mario 64 or whatever, but it was also kind of unneeded to be in Mario Kart 7 at all. I have no problems with anyone in row 2, everyone there, it's fine. Row 3, on the other hand, you know, this whole row probably could have been cut. Baby Mario, Baby Luigi, and Baby Peach were all in the Yoshi's Island series, so you can make an argument for them. You know what, Baby Mario may be fine, but I still think they weren't needed. Baby Daisy, though, is just ridiculous. She only appeared starting with Wii-era spin-off games, and you can maybe argue, well, Daisy, you know, that's a main character, she only appears in spin-off games. Well, yeah, she does. So maybe you shouldn't make a baby character of a character who's already relegated to spin-offs. Baby Rosalina, come on, like, what the hell? Like, really? Really? Rosalina was in mainline games at least, but she was not playable until 3D World as a bonus unlockable, and still at least relatively was a minor character. She barely even appeared in Galaxy 2, to be completely honest. Then we have Pink Gold Peach. Now what can be said about this character that hasn't already been said? People have memed on this for 10 years, but it really is just a disgrace to the franchise. Then we have all 7 Koopalings. Now I think this was jumping the shark beyond a reasonable doubt. Whether you like the Koopalings or not, we did not need all 7. Here's the problem. We're missing some of the best Mario characters of all time here, at least in terms of spin-offs. No Dry Bones, no Birdo, no Diddy Kong, no Boo, no Bowser Jr., not even the goddamn Moo Fish. If they were here and the Koopalings were kind of just added as a bonus, I think that'd be fine. But these guys, who most people were sick of by 2014 due to the abundance of new Super Mario Bros. Games, took up some really valuable slots. Obviously, there's one final character being the Miis. I mean, these don't really count as a character, so I'm not going to put them in the final math count. This puts us at 29 characters, with 14 debatably being filler, nearly half of the entire roster.
And yes, I know some of this is just nitpicking, so let's double down and nitpick some more. I'm not freaking around right now.
Another problem I have is that I feel like this character layout is genuinely nonsensical. Look how long it takes to select Wario. For one, it feels strange to me that Wario, Waluigi, Donkey Kong, and Bowser are all hanging out towards the bottom. Maybe you could argue because they're evil that they deserve it, but having row 3 above them at a very minimum is just strange. Then in row 2, why the hell did they separate Toad and Toadette? Did they have a fucking divorce? All this has been talked about in various videos, I'm sure. We're not really covering that much new ground here, but I do think it's at a very minimum kind of a detriment to the UI. I much prefer how Mario Kart Wii did it. Here, the characters were listed by weight class, so it was less about importance and more about convenience. Mario Kart 7, even though the roster itself was subpar, at least knew how to keep the filler characters towards the bottom, because really, who the hell wants to play as Wiggler? Okay, before I lose everyone from doing one of my infamous rants, real quick, if you're enjoying the video, I would really appreciate it if you drop a like and subscribe. It really does help me continue making this content and make sure that more people find it as well, which is why YouTubers gotta ask for it if you're enjoying the content, so we can keep doing what we're doing. It's not just to annoy you, it really does help us. And now back to your regularly scheduled complaining. Alright, let's talk about something relevant. Oh, character stats. You know, the actual, gameplay effect of what I was just complaining about for 5 minutes. Well, to tell you the truth, weight classes, being small, medium, and large, are really only about half the battle, maybe even only a quarter. The real bread and butter of how your stats appear are baked into the robust kart customization selection, which appears after selecting your character. This really kind of stemmed from Mario Kart 7, although no one cares because people on the internet say it's bad. Elements of kart customization can be seen in Mario Kart games as far back as Double Dash, though. In that game, you were able to at least choose one out of a handful of karts per your heaviest weight class, and Mario Kart Wii had 6 karts and 6 bikes available per character. Fast forward to the present though, and now you can choose not only the kart, but the wheels and hang gliders. One of the karts in this game is a shoe. While Mario Kart Wii introduced bikes, and 7 only had the karts, 8 brings both of them back in additions to ATVs and sports bikes, because the previous bikes weren't sporty enough, I guess, I don't know. All these factors work in combination to give you the stats you're looking for. You can absolutely tell the difference, but nothing ever feels so different where it's uncomfortable. It's fairly balanced, and I think it's a good line between complex and simple. The only real major difference in playstyle is the outright kart versus bikes debate. The bikes basically are faster, but require a bit more of time to pull off a drift, and has a slightly higher turning radius. Some of the karts are pretty cute callbacks. Specifically, I love the airship kart, and it's funny to see the bitty bugs from Super Mario 3D Land make an appearance. Between this and the Mario movie, I think it's safe to say Nintendo is trying to gaslight us into thinking they were a beloved enemy. Sure, there's a lot of typical karts too, but I think it's a pretty healthy selection. Well, you choose your character, choose your kart, and it's time to play.
I know you all come to the JeffCompass channel to hear enriching, fascinating, detailed thoughts on gameplay. I will not let you down. It's Mario Kart.
I mean, look, if you played Mario Kart before, you probably have a good idea of what this game plays like. Holding A accelerates, B brakes, L throws items, and R lets you do a trick off of a ramp for a speed boost, or you could do it off a tiny crack in the ground, all the same really. I do feel like the coins in combination with the trick system really adds a level of depth to Mario Kart that I felt previous games were lacking. There's always at least something to focus on, even if you're at first. That being said, I do think first place always gets kind of a distinct advantage, as there are so many fewer racers near you and fewer risks of being emotionally abused. stage. As per usual for Mario Kart, items scale depending on where you are between 1st and 12th place. Towards the end of the pack, there are bullet bills, which wreak havoc in your path and usually moves up a few places, and a thunderbolt, which makes you a god that spins out everyone else, because that's what gods do, I guess. There are stars, based on a game made 30 years. Okay, I don't need to explain to you everything. You know what a star is. I don't love every item, though. This has been a common critique of the franchise, but the blooper kinda sucks. It splats goo on everyone's screen, which can be at most a minor hindrance, and at best you barely even realize it's there. It's annoying because sometimes you'll be in 8th or 7th, get the blooper, and it really just means you're gonna fall a bunch of places behind since everyone's just gonna get better items than you. A lot of your standard Mario power-ups appear too. Mushrooms make you go fast and gives you leeway for many shortcuts and potential ramps. Fire flowers hand you a ton of ammo that most people just spam, but if you play it smart, it can be a very handy weapon. That's not always fun, so I just fire it. There's a boomerang, which comes back to you after 2 throws and goes away to the depths of hell on the 3rd. It's kinda cool, but I don't think this is anyone's favorite item or anything. And as always, you have the Mario Kart classics. Green shells are a projectile you actually gotta think about and aim and do geometry on the fly, and then red shells say screw all that, boom. And finally, there's the beloved banana, or a banana peel if you're a literalist. These may seem kinda useless, but not only can they be placed in pretty clever locations, they're also a necessity if you're in 1st place, so you can block any red shells from behind. There are also coins which you can get, which kinda take that away, so if you're in 1st, you're not always gonna be safe. Sadly, you can't block everything, asterisk. If a blue shell comes and gets you, it always targets 1st place. Unless you get ridiculous frames that give you invincibility out of what I presume is just sheer luck, you're screwed. Unless you have a mushroom and time it like a god. Yeah, there's the other item too, I forgot. Yeah, the super horn. Now, is this the almighty grand blue shell destroyer you and your mother have been hoping for?
No, not really.
To tell you the truth, it's pretty rare you're gonna have it in 1st. It's not impossible, and it does happen from time to time, but due to the ladder of item balancing, it's a super low chance of actually getting it without just having it earlier and just holding on to it. If you do get it and use it on a blue shell, it is so satisfying. Other items include a piranha plant, which chomps up other players and gives you a tiny little speed boost, and bomb bombs in case you felt like this game wasn't breaking enough crimes as is, and the Super 8, which gives you a bunch of items. If you play it smart, it can be a really handy weapon. Yeah, that sounds familiar.
And that's basically the gameplay. Drive, don't fall off the cliff, use items and people. It's pretty novel and something that most people love to pick up and play to this very day. But with that, I think it's time we look at, the main point of the game, being the tracks, and looking at them and analyzing those. So we're gonna take a look at all the new tracks, not the retro tracks. I don't know, it's something fun I thought would work for a deep dive. I'll probably hate myself later, but it's juicy content, okay?
Firstly, we have the Mushroom Cup. It starts off with Mario Kart Stadium. Every Mario Kart game starts with some generic stadium track, but this one takes a huge step forward for the series. It's at night. I'm not even joking, actually. I think it gives it a really unique atmosphere. Some might even say it's night and day. Legally, I'm obligated to tell you there's an anti-gravity section, a few ramps. I mean, look, the simplicity's fine. It's the first track of the game. This is followed by a water park, which is our first introduction to, parks and water. I think this one's a bit weak for a course designed about a theme park. It just doesn't feel like we do that many theme park things. It would have been cooler if we actually went on rides or anything like that. And to an extent, I know that's what you're doing, but it just doesn't really feel like it. It sort of just feels like, another water track. Sweet, sweet canyon. Okay, now this track is just fantastic. Visually, it's a treat. Get it? Because, a treat is a sweet. And sometimes sweets are called treats. Everything in this track is a candy or pastry in some way. Wafers, gingerbread toads, Yoshis, almost everything. I love that when you go underwater, it's not supposed to be water, but more or less just a syrup. This is one of the best Mario Kart tracks in the game, and maybe one of the best of all time. Including the cup is Whomp's Fortress. I like the theme. It does feel to me that this was based off of those new Super Mario Bros. Levels, which I think was a great fodder to expand on. I think this is an appropriate way to cap off the first cup, too. This introduces a recurring gameplay device we'd see pop up throughout the future tracks, where you can see these little anti-gravity sections that you can try to shift to get a boost off to the side, leaving a good risk reward. To compensate for them being slower, these are where some coins and items are placed. There's also a lot more objects to avoid here than in the other tracks so far, and all in all, it's a well done course. The Mushroom Cup overall might be a bit bland at times, but it serves as a really strong introduction to the game. Starting up the Flower Cup, we have Mario Circuit.
So we have Mario Circuit 1, 2, 3, and 4. We have Mario Circuit for Mario Kart Super Circuit, Mario Circuit for Mario Kart Double Dash, Mario Circuit for Mario Kart Wii, Mario Circuit Strip from Mario Kart 7, Mario Circuit from Mario Kart 8. It's like, which one do you like? Gee, I like the one that isn't a grassy plain with 2 ramps.
Because now we have a boring grassy plain with anti-gravity. Yeah, that's basically all this track is going for. It's still fun, and seeing the other players overhead is fairly exhilarating, at least on your first go-around. Following it is Toad Harbor, which I talked about earlier. This is one of my all-time favorites. They nailed the atmosphere for one thing, but there's also just so much to do here. There's so many different paths at every turn, some of which are a little more useless than others. Like, who actually takes a long road here? I've never seen it benefit anyone. All in all, we got a living, breathing town, and it has a statue of Peach in the background, confirming that the world of Mario probably also has a constitution. Twisted Mansion is a bit on the boring side. It's your typical spooky mansion. To be honest, I don't know why they didn't just make this a Luigi's Mansion themed track. Oh, that's right, they already have a course named Luigi's Mansion. Oh, but 20 iterations of Mario Circuit is just fine and dandy. I don't have a lot to say. I might get hate for saying this, but I do think it's one of the weaker original tracks of the game. It certainly doesn't help like a third of this is underwater, which is the last thing I think of when I imagine a spooky mansion. Finally, Shy Guy Falls. The atmosphere here is quite rich. I love imagining the Shy Guys having this thriving society where they're pumping out crystals on a day-to-day basis. The atmosphere is pretty neat, and going up the waterfalls is a really good use of the anti-gravity. I think this cup is a bit weaker than the Mushroom Cup, but in a game as good as this game, it's an 8 out of 10 against a 9 out of 10, no one cares. The Star Cup begins taking us to Sunshine Airport, which, congratulations, this is the 1000th reference to Mario Sunshine without Nintendo actually making a sequel to the game. Your prize is a root canal. It's funny because in real life I hate and detest airports, but they still do have a certain charm to them. The thrill of taking an adventure, just being somewhere you're not usually, and I feel this captures that sort of energy pretty well. No complaints. Actually, one complaint: where the hell is the TSA? I can't even bring a water bottle to an airport, but these guys literally throw bombs at each other? Dolphin Shoals. I think it's a good mixture of the water levels from Mario 3D World and the Galaxy games. I'm not a big fan of water levels, as I've alluded to in past videos, but this one does a lot to earn its position in the game. I love this eel you can trick off of like 6 or 7 times, and there's a lot of winding paths in that section. Not my favorite track of all time, but it's a damn good one and has one of the best songs in the entire game. Electrodome. Alright, some people are gonna be mad at me for this one, but I'm really not a huge fan of this track. It's an original idea, yeah, but it just kind of feels bland to me. It goes for a cool kid rave aesthetic. It's charming and you can actually see it, but I feel like half the track just takes place on muted roads that struggle to keep my attention. Concluding the Star Cup is one of the best Mario Kart tracks. You know what, screw it. It's probably the best track, at least at the time it released. I'm of course talking about Wario Mountain. This track is the first one in the game to be done in 3 sections instead of laps, and I love when Nintendo does these. It's downright impressive how much they were able to compact into a single track. Mountains, forests, rivers, skiing hills, I likey. There's a reason this went down in history as one of the best Mario Kart tracks of all time, perhaps even multiple. And the last out of the 4 main cups, the Crown Cup. It starts with another Mario Galaxy inspired level, being Cloud Top Cruise. I say Mario Galaxy because of the music and the cloud power-up, but it should be noted that the cloud aesthetic dates back to the early games in the franchise, and there's even an airship section because Mario 3 fans get like unlimited fan service that I've never seen for any other Mario game. Like seriously, it's kind of ridiculous, guys. I think the best part of this level is when you're in the thunderstorm with lightning cracking down on boost panels, and you have to time out whether or not you think the thunder will come down by the time you reach them. It looks way easier than it actually is, so take your ego and throw it in the trash can. Next up is Bone Dry Dunes, and yep, it's bone dry alright. And a desert, yeah, everyone hates this level. I don't think it's the spawn of Satan like some fans make it out to be, but it's certainly not a standout track. I think the lighting is probably the best part of it, but when that's the highest point of praise I can find here, we're certainly not talking about a winner, okay? Thankfully, we follow this up with Bowser's Castle, a tradition for Mario Kart games, and in my opinion, the best Bowser's Castle in the entire series. There's a lot going on here. Boulders, hallways with lasers, tight turns, a giant mechanical Bowser punching down, and so many other contraptions. It genuinely feels like a 2D Mario level's Bowser Castle converted to a racetrack, and it's a job well done.
And they followed it up with the worst track in the game.
Yeah, I know, I might get some people mad at me for this one, or maybe not. I don't know, maybe people agree with me. It's like fine, but it's so fine that it's boring. Now for reference, you really have to peep at the other Rainbow Roads in the series. The game right before this, Mario Kart 7, has what fans consider to be the best Rainbow Road in the franchise, where you ride on planets and eventually the moon. It was honestly exhilarating. Even looking back a bit further, Mario Kart Wii and Double Dash created tracks that required some genuine skill. So even if those weren't breathtaking in scope, they left a pretty distinct spot content or memories due to the sheer difficulty. Mario Kart 8's Rainbow Road has neither ambition or difficulty. It's just bad. So honestly, I do think the Crown Cup is the worst out of the 4 main cups. Again, the game is great, so it's all relative, but it is still disappointing nonetheless. Overall though, these are some absolutely amazing tracks. I think at most the highest general point of criticism is that these are a bit on the stereotypical side. There are a lot of general themes like water, clouds, and desert, and that's not anything too new to the franchise, but I do feel like we needed kind of one or more too outright ambitious tracks, something like Waluigi's Pinball or Mushroom City. But with that, I do want to address some prior criticism I got for a previous kart racing review, this being Pac-Man World Rally. Since it's relevant to the point I'm bringing up here, my biggest issue with that game was that the tracks really had nothing to do with Pac-Man. People rightfully brought up, though, that Mario Kart tracks aren't always necessarily based around Mario games as well. You mean you don't remember the Mario game where you tripped out at a rave? So why do I give Mario Kart more of a pass while I grilled Pac-Man for the same sort of problem? Well, I think Mario Kart tracks inherently work a bit better because they feel like, for the most part, levels that could easily be in a Mario game. Sunshine Airport feels like an extension of Mario Sunshine. In fact, where was it? Thwomp Room sort of feels like an exploration of a new Super Mario Bros. Level that I keep referencing. Sweet Sweet Canyon captures the spirit of Mario Galaxy, and so does Cloud Top Cruise. These are based on general stereotypes, but so are the main games. I mean, Mario invented these stereotypes in video games. Pac-Man just doesn't feel at home in Arctic Iceberg or Rolling Hills, since that's not exactly where the game's set as precedent. These 4 cups we just spoke about, though, are only half of the base game. As tradition by this point in the franchise, there are also 16 retro tracks based off of previous Mario Kart games, even that one. Now, I'm not going to talk about every single track in these cups. This is a Mario Kart 8 video, and it would be kind of weird to critique and break down tracks that didn't originate from Mario Kart 8. What I will say is that the retro tracks in Mario Kart 8 are better and more improved than any other retro courses in the history of the franchise. They almost feel like an entirely brand new tracks, to be honest. This serves as a sharp contrast to games like Mario Kart Wii and 7, where the tracks more or less felt basically one-to-one with their counterparts. I think this is in part due to the hardware of the older consoles. For example, Mario Kart Wii, since the Wii was about as powerful as my left shoe, they could port the exact double dash tracks over without too much effort. The Wii U was the first Nintendo console in HD, so if you took a track from Mario Kart 64 and tried to recreate it one for one, it might look like one of the games on the Wii U eShop. So they essentially built these tracks from the ground up, and I think this is one of the best decisions made for the entire franchise. It feels like you really do get a good value of 32 tracks. The layouts are fairly similar, which is the point, but occasionally they do add new elements, like the occasional anti-gravity sections or hang glider sections. Take Mario Circuit GBA, for example. They made a fairly boring, simple track feel like a genuine raceway, with a pit stop and everything. And look at something like the Donut Plains 3 remake. I mean, this does not look like a Super Nintendo track anymore. Aesthetically throughout, there are some genuine improvements. Sherbert Land feels more like a celebration on a snowy night with fireworks blasting through the sky. If anything, I'd say the Mario Kart 7 tracks are the only ones that are basically the same as the originals, but they still look breathtaking and were given a well-deserved graphical improvement. Not every retro track is a 10 out of 10 though.
Whoever chose Mario Kart 8's retro tracks really had a problem with Mario Kart 64 for some reason, because the way these tracks got treated, I think it's grounds for a lawsuit in some jurisdictions, honestly.
Royal Raceway was a good choice to return to the franchise, but I think what kills it for me is they removed the ability to drive off the main road and see Peach's castle from Mario 64. I know, this was supposed to be an Easter egg, so maybe it's just nitpicking, but when you think about Royal Raceway, I mean, what comes to your mind? It's usually that, because it's not really that interesting of a track otherwise.
So for them to take it out is unacceptable.
Okay, it's not that serious, it's fine. Then we have Rainbow Road for Mario Kart 64. The charm of this track came from the fact that it was so long, being about 6 minutes to finish. In this game, they just made it 3 sections, which in my opinion takes the entire point away. I can understand this to a degree, there is an online mode they have to consider, but they should have at least just made it like 2 laps or something. As per traditional Mario Kart, you can either play these via a Grand Prix, playing the entire cup at once in speeds of 50cc, 100cc, 150cc, or a mirrored mode. There's also a versus mode, which lets you set custom rules and track selection methods. And of course, there are the time trials. These are self-explanatory for the most part. You drive for the self-satisfaction of getting better or to race your ghost. But one addition I really valued in this game was the ability to race a Nintendo employee's ghost, and each track, including the DLC, would get them. So if you win, you feel accomplished that you're literally better than Nintendo, and you also might learn a few cool shortcuts along the way you can use in your own races. But on top of that, it's fairly addicting single-player content in a game that doesn't really have a lot out of it. Yeah, I think this is one of the biggest biggest points of contention in Mario Kart 8. The game really has little to nothing that's not just multiplayer content. Which, you know, it's a multiplayer series, it's fine, but ever since Mario Kart DS came out, people have been mad that mission mode did not make a return. I love local multiplayer, but I don't play it that much nowadays, as all my friends are not gamers, and my therapist says they don't exist at all. So what I spend most of my time on instead of Mario Kart 8 is the online mode. And you'd think with the Wii U being a pile of crap, it wouldn't run that well. But you'd be wrong. I remember playing on this for endless amounts of hours with almost no problem. If anything, the Switch version had more problems with dropping connections, and that was paid for. The best change to the online mode, in my opinion, was now instead of everyone voting for a track out of the 32 thrown into a randomized pool, you pick between 3 courses and the random option. It just makes it a lot more simple, and theoretically should cut down on the time between races. Theoretically.
Dude, the 3 options are Electrodrome, Mario Circuit, and Dry. Dude, just pick something, okay? It's not that hard. Everyone else has picked, but you freaking have it. You freaking have it. Oh my god, why'd you even go online if you're just gonna waste everyone's fucking time? We've all picked. Did you leave the TV? Are you taking a piss? Are you getting food? Is your child crying? Like, just exit the game at that point. Pick something. You're timing out. We're literally about to run out of freaking time. He picks last second, of course.
This all revolves around a point system, which scales you with players according to your overall skill. If you win, you get points. If you lose points. I mean, yeah, you get the idea. Now, this point system, which goes back to Mario Kart Wii, can be a bit stressful, but it is a good way to make sure that you play with players that are actually balanced. To me, since Mario Kart Wii, online has always been what I play when I turn on Mario Kart, so I can confirm via personal experience, this does a damn good job. It's not one-for-one with actual local multiplayer. Sometimes an item will hit you with an obvious blatant lag, when it really didn't make any sense. What are you gonna do about it? Break the game?
And that's Mario Kart 8. It's a perfect game, is what I wish I could say to you.
There's one other main mode here, this being a series tradition dating back to Super Mario Kart, being Battle Mode. Battle Mode always retained kart racing gameplay, sure, but instead of racing with the aim of seeing who can complete a track the fastest, you play on more or less arenas with the usual objective to rack up points or destroy the other player, such as Balloon Battle, which every time you hit a racer, they lose a balloon. It's simple. Now, I do think Battle Mode started falling off in the series around Mario Kart Wii, which forced time limits, which I think was just a huge loss. But with how masterful Mario Kart 8 is, you might think this mode could be a gem. It's crap. Instead of driving in tailor-made battle courses like previous entries, they made the decision of all time to have you race on tracks from the base game where you loop around them like a race in circles, and no one to this day understands why. Well, in my opinion at least, it was very clear that this was a decision made to cut costs and development time. I mean, you have to keep in mind, Nintendo as a company was kind of in a turmoil, and Mario Kart is their get-out-of-jail-free card. So it was in their best interest to kind of get this game out as fast as possible, and so stockholders wouldn't abandon them in their darkest hour. But yeah, it doesn't work and it's not very fun. I think the problem I have with it is if they wanted to cut costs down, that's one thing and something I can understand, but why in the name of Pink Gold Peach would you have these courses be straight up tracks? What they could have done is just take sections of tracks and put up blockades. Think Dry Desert with the whole Mirage area, or Sherbert Land, which could have blocked out the ending section and the section with the caves. I don't know, at least find areas that resemble arenas, maybe add some ramps. I mean, this isn't just lazy, it's lazy without any real regard for the mode. Not to mention, more development time went into a dozen filler characters that really were never needed in the game anyways. I think it would have been more self-preserving to just not even have this mode at all. This is outright disappointing, and fans had every reason to be mad. The only mode that even made it over is Balloon Battle. Mario Kart Double Dash had Balloon Battle, had Shine Thief, Bomb mode, all these modes in 2004, and Mario Kart 8 tries to be authentic to the series' roots by having one mode like in Super Mario Kart. I love this PR speech. I'm sure there will be a few people who aren't so sure about us moving away from how we've done things previously, but I hope they tried it out for themselves first.
I think when you have to give an interview like that, you probably already lost the battle.
I'm sure it'll be a new experience for everyone and like no other battles in Mario Kart before.
Well, you're not wrong. It was a new experience and one unlike any other Mario Kart game I've played because it sucked.
Yeah, let's just say this as a whole. Mario Kart 8, as many positives as I can list about it, definitely had some flaws. In the first iteration in the game, after every race, the first option was to view highlight reel. So if you're mashing A, hoping to move on to the next track, sometimes you'll screw yourself and everyone at the party will yell at you and make you feel bad. I'm not talking from personal experience, just shut the fuck up, okay? I don't think anyone really cares about this, but it's linked to your Mario Kart TV. Wii, which shows all your recent races and battles, probably your races, I don't think anyone did battles. It was kinda cool. It was linked with Miiverse, the social media on Wii U that was infested by annoying children, including myself at the time. From here, you could upload them to YouTube, just in case you wanted to risk getting a copyright strike from Grandpa Nintendo. Now look, most Nintendo games, or hell, video games as a whole, who are we kidding, are flawed in some form, but there was one benefit to Mario Kart 8 being on Nintendo's first, quote-unquote, modern console. You see, in the days prior to the internet, a video game was released and that was that. If it was trash, it would go down in history as trash and probably be in physical trash cans as well. Now, Mario Kart 8 is nowhere near trash. In fact, it's pretty damn good. I know that's a hot take. The point being, its flaws could indeed be improved now with the advent of updates and DLC. But we occasionally did updates like the Skyward Sword channel, but that was mainly an emergency and not the norm. The 3DS also did introduce DLC and updates for some games, but like, it was not only a weaker handheld, it was sort of a testing ground for a lot of these concepts. So by the time Nintendo had gotten to the Wii U, they were now able to appropriately improve and update their newest games. So with that, what did they decide to add?
I'm not mad, I'm just mad.
It's kind of a cool crossover, but these things are sort of marred by the fact that you just know it was done as blatant product placement. Like, ooh, goody, I can play as Wreck-It Ralph and Danica Patrick in Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing. Yay? This was a free update though, so it really hurt no one besides my soul. You get 3 Mercedes cars, you got some GLA tires, and it might come as a shocker, but I'm a nerd, so I really don't know what any of this means, but I assume it's good. This update, being labeled 2.0, wasn't just so Nintendo could cash a check to please the loan sharks. So I forgot to mention this in the main review, but there was originally no minimap on the screen, just the gamepad. This thankfully fixed that, and they also fixed the next race menu flub. So now hopefully Mike Matei can sleep at night. However, the Mercedes Benz promotion was only the appetizer for the future of Mario Kart 8. Maybe not even the appetizer, it was basically the bread on the table before the appetizer. Or, you know, the mints that you grab on the way in. You get the point. On August 26th of the same year, Nintendo would unveil 2 new packs of DLC via a press release.
Yes, screw social media, screw Nintendo Directs. The true gamers study the press releases.
This DLC seemed really solid though, introducing 2 crossovers with Mario, which, save for Smash Brothers, haven't really existed, being the idea of adding the universes of adding the universes of The Legend of Zelda and Animal Crossing with references to other Nintendo racing games like Excitebike and F-Zero. So Nintendo could shut the F-Zero fans up for 60 more days until they demanded a new game again. This was to be released in 2 waves, the first being in November 2014 and the second being in May of the following year. Each wave would give 3 characters, 4 vehicles, and 8 tracks. And this was all for $7 a pack, or $12 for the double pack. It's kind of comical seeing that good of a deal, but that was the nature of DLC back in 2014. Nintendo felt like it had to earn its consumers' money. It's also worth noting that buying the double pack would give you 8 different Yoshi and Shy Guy colors apiece, so yeah, just buy the double pack. There's really no reason not to.
You know, I want wave 1, but wave 2, I'm not too sure about that. Not gonna buy it.
So let's view these pack by pack. The first wave of the DLC would be released November 13th, 2014. Of course, the main draw, character-wise, to this pack was Link himself, a rather bold addition, and funny to see his long legs riding the same carts as humans half of his size. The other 2 characters in this pack were sort of a waste though, being Tanuki Mario and Cat Peach. Why the hell these weren't just costumes is beyond me, but I can't say I'm really a fan of these 2. Mario Kart 8 had such a heavy filler problem as is, and this only raised the percentage of it. Congratulations. The tracks in the DLC are mostly new, so we'll go through the cups as we did for the base game. The Yoshi 8 cup starts with Yoshi Circuit from Double Dash. Oh really? I thought it was gonna be Waluigi Pinball. The addition of this track is a tad bit unprecedented, as this was the first track to be remade twice in the franchise, at least if you exclude the Super Mario Kart tracks that were all added to Mario Kart Super Circuit first. From here, it would happen quite often in Mario Kart 8's lifespan, but with so many tracks and fan favorites, I do think that's inevitable. To be fair, the DS version of this track anyways, it was on the DS. So seeing it remade in brand spanking new HD was pretty enjoyable, especially as a Double Dash fan. We have to band together and take what we can get, because Nintendo gives us nothing. Next up, we have Excitebike Arena. You might think at a first glance, it's just an oval, who cares? I mean, I criticize Rainbow Road for a track design that's theoretically better. However, every time you play this track, you're very likely to get a pattern you've never played before, with over 200 potential combinations of ramps and mud that you can get. As such, the stage is never predictable. And while I think the whole Excitebike charm of it was lost to some degree, since it's ultimately pretty simple visually, I mean, there wasn't much they could do looking at the source material. Following this is Dragon Driftway, based on Gobblegut from Super Mario Galaxy 2. I think the stage in particular is actually quite a bit harder than the standard Mario Kart track. It's nothing a casual player won't be able to play, but there is an ever so slight difficulty increase here, with a lot more turns than the average course. I love this one a lot. It's a great theme and pretty rewarding all in all. And finally, we have Mute City, the first F-Zero inspired stage. What's important to note is that coins are gone. I mean, you can still get the item and pick them up from people you assaulted with green shells, but to collect them overall, you're gonna have to drive on the recharge stations. A cute little touch. These are pretty fast-paced stages with lots of boost panels, but I think it did more damage to the F-Zero fanbase when all said and done because it made people realize just how much potential the franchise would have in a modern setting with these graphics. And next up is the Triforce Cup. It begins with another retro stage being Wario's Gold Mine from Mario Kart Wii. This stage is such a massive overhaul graphically that it should be categorized as a hate crime to Mario Kart Wii. I mean, holy crap. I mean, it could just be the fact that I'm a sucker for this orange sunset tint aesthetic because I'm basic. If anything, I do think this track is a bit easier than the first iteration. The minecarts here are now an anti-gravity section, which means that the whole area has a lot less challenge than it used to. Like, I remember as a kid, this stage used to be the graveyard of trash Mario Kart players. I speak from experience. They then decided to add a third Rainbow Road, this being Super Mario Kart. Also a repeated retro track, this being the third redo. And I don't know about this one, to be honest. I think it's sort of visually boring. Like, I know they're trying to be faithful and blah blah blah, you're a shill, get over it. I don't think it's really that fun, and it feels very archaic in design as a result. Adding womps and a ramp is just not enough to save it. Next up is Ice Ice Outpost, which has the gimmick of two interconnecting tracks that you can swap between. I've seen a lot of criticism for this stage, but I don't think it's really that bad personally. I think the biggest point of criticism you can attribute here is something the likes of Mario Party 4, which had maps that were a tad forgettable due to the idea you could just interchange the background, like the roads were not anything tangible to the environment. You could probably argue that here as well. And finally, Hyrule Circuit. I like this one enough, but I do think this track is kind of boring. For a track about Hyrule, there are certainly a lot of boring grassy plains. You do go to a castle at some point with a little puzzle activating a ramp. You hit multiple gravity bumpers, which is nice, but then you get out and it's just more grassy plains. Oh, look, a Zelda enemy. I think this is a bit underwhelming. It looks a bit too generic for my liking, and there are not that many Zelda Easter eggs that really are present here. It is a cute touch that coins were changed to rupees, and in general, most crossover stages in this game would do something like that. Wave 1 is pretty damn good though. As always, any nitpicks are so inconsequential overall. It is important to point out as well that Mario Kart 8 would also add Mii costumes with this update based off of Amiibo, just in case you wanted to spend $13 for a Yoshi suit. All in all, a pretty solid update and a lot of fun. And I'm no mathematician or anything, but that's only half of it. Fast forward to April 2015 and we get DLC Pack 2. Yeah, they originally planned this for May 2015 and then they released a week earlier, probably because Nintendo had nothing better to do in this era. They were barely releasing games. The theme of this wave was Animal Crossing. It's worth noting around this time that fans had been rampantly anticipating a new Animal Crossing game for the Wii U. Villager made it to Smash, there was an Animal Crossing Plaza app, and now the girl and boy villagers. There was Isabelle from New Leaf, and a track were in Mario Kart 8 now. Hot diggity dog, Animal Crossing must be coming. This has to be some sort of wild promotion for a new game. We all said.
Yeah, Nintendo hates us.
All we got was Amiibo Festival, so I really don't know why they promoted Animal Crossing so heavily here. But hey, it made for a banger DLC pack. We got the two villager genders, and Isabelle, who was a new character from New Leaf. The final character was Dry Bowser, which, yeah, I mean, it's technically a clone, but at least he was a new character from the mainline games. Where's the Mario game where you meet Pink Gold Peach, huh? It's right, it doesn't exist. Starting off the Crossing Cup is Baby Park, which leads me to one pivotal question. Why? They keep bringing this one back, but it was only good in Double Dash because of the sheer chaos of throwing items over the center. It's anti-gravity now, but who cares without the insanity? It's just a literal oval. It looks detailed as hell, but I'm not a fan of this inclusion. Next is technically a retro track, but honestly, Cheeseland barely resembles its original, being from Super Circuit. It feels like a new track, and I think this was the idea. Just how far can we go with improvements to the point of making the inspired track just irrelevant? Wild Woods. It's a bit forgettable and feels a bit short. I'm not really feeling the vibes here, but it's good by technicality. Finally, we have the headliner of the cup, aptly titled Animal Crossing. They really could not think of something to name it, could they? The draw of this course is that it changes seasons each time you race on it from a pool of 4. It looks really good, and it makes the fact that we didn't get an Animal Crossing game on Wii U all the more insulting. The tracks are relatively similar between seasons, but there are slight differences. With all this, Mario Kart 8 just kind of turned into a dumping ground for games that we all wanted but didn't get, so we just had to accept the teasing and cry. And finally, the Bell Cup. You can tell they started running out of stuff to name cups out of. Firstly is Neo Bowser City, which it's Neo Bowser City. I mean, it looks beautiful, but they added basically nothing to it. Although getting to this wind boost is basically impossible now, which I don't know if it was just a misstep or they intentionally did that to make it a mushroom reward. Following this, though, is my favorite track in the entire game, Ribbon Road. Now, this is technically a retro track, again from Super Circuit, but throw that notion out the window. These two barely have anything in common. You know what? It's a new track, I'm rewriting history, it's plain and simple, brand freaking new. The concept is just amazing, the visuals are spectacular, and there are so many Easter eggs. This track is a love letter to the entire Mario franchise. areas, and it's pretty challenging too, with some genuinely difficult optional ramps. Following this track is Super Bell Subway. What this has to do with Super Bells? No clue. But I love this course, and to their credit, it's something that hasn't been done before in Mario Kart. And as someone who's taken the Metro many times in LA, they really capture the feel of it, as in, it's chaos and pain, but in a good, fun way, you know? Finally, Big Blue. This is a track split up into 3 sections. Same general principles apply here from Mute City. The coins are mainly received from these panels, and there's a lot of speed boosts as well. The music here might be the best song in the entire game, honestly. I specifically love this shortcut you could do here by jumping off the whole track. Alongside this pack, more me costumes, who cares? Wait a minute, is that a Pikmin costume? Quite literally out of nowhere with this update, Nintendo would add a 200cc mode to Mario Kart 8, making it the fastest racing in the entire franchise to this day. This received quite a mixed reception at the time. It's important to note that this wasn't actually paid DLC, but was a free update regardless if you paid for the packs or not, so it ultimately meant more people would complain about it. 200cc is very hard, no doubt about it, but I really think a lot of the difficulty came from the fact that no one tried to use the brake. To some degree, you can't blame the players entirely for that. In 150cc, you basically just hold A the entire time and very rarely press the B button. It's hard, sure, but there's more than enough wiggle room to get a feel for it. But that requires, effort? E-Fort? Nah, yeah, these tracks were definitely not tailored for this at all, and some of them, like Mario Kart 64 Rainbow Road, were about as long as this sentence. I feel like seriously getting mad about any of this is nonsensical, as it's optional, but when has that ever stopped anyone from saying anything? And that's Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U. Ultimately, despite the console failing, it still sold, like, stupidly well, clocking in at 8.46 million units. For a console that did that bad, that is an insane attachment rate, but was it enough to save the console?
If I'm asking that question, you probably know it didn't.
It was as good of an attempt as any, but nothing could have saved the Wii U. Mario Kart 8 was by far the closest to doing so, but with a mediocre post-launch window followed by inconsistent marketing, no matter how good Mario Kart 8 was, which was basically near masterpiece level save for battle mode, it just wasn't meant to happen. I think the console's death was solidified before this game even started development, to be quite frank. Around this era, there was a lot of debate and speculation about what would be next for the failing Nintendo. Would they continue their handheld line, or would they go third party? It was sort of a depressing time to be a fan. All we knew is that they were making something called the NX, but details were pretty sparse. Nintendo barely supported the Wii U all of 2016, and instead started focusing on mobile games and the NES Classic. Well, lo and behold, in October 2016, the Nintendo Switch was unveiled. This was one of the best trailers for a game console, probably ever. And there were quite a number of games shown off for the damn thing. I mean, Breath of the Wild, which people predicted would happen anyways. There was Skyrim and NBA, and what's that? Mario Kart 8? Now, fans were quick to speculate on what this was. A new Mario Kart, maybe? Just a port of Mario Kart 8, or worst case scenario, was the inclusion only a proof of concept? I don't blame anyone who thought it could have been that, as Skyrim and NBA 2K were in the trailer, and neither game company had confirmed an actual release for the console. While looking at the footage again, one of the gamers in this car playing on that attachment that never got released were playing as King Boo, who was not in the original game. I think it's safe to say that a whole new character shown basically confirmed an expanded port was in the works. It's not the type of thing a company would do for the memes, and it proves it wasn't just copy and pasted footage from something else. The gameplay also obviously had the Mario Kart 8 UI, although it's important to note that there were 2 item boxes in the top right instead of 1. Now, you've seen that throughout the footage the entire time, but that's because I'm recording on Deluxe anyway, so it is important to note that originally the game only let you hold 1 item. Fast forward to January 13th, 2017, and Nintendo would hold not a Nintendo Direct, but instead more of a press event showing off what the Switch was and the games that would come to it. Mario Kart footage was used, and look at that, battle mode with actual arenas, oh my god. Basically, it's all but confirmed, except it was barely actually confirmed. You see, the actual trailer was not in the press conference, but was later released as a separate video on the same day.
So you didn't tell your investors you're putting the best-selling game on your last console onto the new one. Yeah, I'm sure they didn't want to know that.
At least this is based off what I could gather. I scrolled through re-uploads of this press conference countless times just to see if I missed the trailer, and I just don't see the announcement, and I vaguely remember this being the case anyways. Anyways, this trailer, perhaps rightfully so, focuses mostly on battle mode returning, or, being what it should have been in 2014, but better late than never, I guess. There were a good array of battle courses here, including even some from Double Dash, like Luigi's Mansion. And then halfway through the trailer, bombshell, Splatoon is making it over, we got the Squid Kids. And there it is. April 28th, we're getting our second major Switch game. No, snipper clips did not count. Before we talk about the battle mode, it's important that we go over some of the smaller changes to the core game first. Obviously, any Wii U functionality was cut, such as Miiverse support and the majority of Mario Kart TV functionality. While playing the game, the first thing I noticed at the time was that they now added auto steering and auto accelerate, and they're on by default. At that point,
you're kind of just doing nothing.
I'm glad they added accessibility options. I do think they should be there for people who need them, but I do think turning them on by default is kind of bogus. And I always forget to turn them off when I'm playing the game at someone's house. So we always sit there, someone's playing like ass, we pause the game, it's just a big nightmare. And of course, as it pertains to racing, you have the double items. This means that there are double item boxes on the road now, and when you hold a green shell or banana, despite that still taking a slot, you can actually hold on to something else. On top of that, the drifting now has a third color you could release at, being purple. So in general, there was a lot more chaos introduced to this version. I love it. And of course, there were a lot of quality of life improvements in general. I didn't mention this earlier, but in Mario Kart 8 on Wii U, you had to unlock characters by completing Grand Prix Cups at random. Here, all the characters are added automatically. I remember hearing some people mad about it at the time as they wanted the ability to unlock the characters like they have in previous Mario Kart games or just hadn't played 8 before. I personally didn't care, but guess what? I was already biased because I already did it in 8 Wii U, so throw my opinion in the garbage can where it belongs.
Alongside the Squid Kid and the characters that should have been in the game prior, the game also introduced Gold Mario here,
which thankfully is only a costume of Metal Mario, so I won't increase the filler percentage.
Consider yourself lucky, Nintendo.
But by far, the most important, awe-inspiring change was this game was raised from 59 FPS to 60 FPS.
Fans were celebrating in the fucking streets of society.
No one cared about any of that, though. The focus of this product was, as they put it, a new and improved battle mode.
Oh, really? I thought battle mode was bad previously for the artistic vision.
I've never really been a big battle mode guy, to be honest, so sorry if I don't have too much to say here, but regardless, I'll give a summary of what I can. What's really impressive, at least in my opinion, is the fact that this game boasts 5 different battle styles. There's, of course, Balloon Battle, because duh, and returning from Double Dash is Bob-omb Blast and Shine Thief. You know, this combined with the whole double item thing really makes me think the developers were really throwing it back to Double Dash, so
cool, bring over more than 3 stages next time, please, okay?
There's also coin runners. Now, can you possibly guess what you do in this mode? It's kind of hard to think about. And finally, all new to Mario Kart 8 is Renegade Roundup. There are 2 teams here, the Authorities and the Renegades.
So it's cops and robbers. Someone at Nintendo likes synonyms.
Use the Piranha Plant items here as the cops to throw people in jail. I'm sorry I don't have more to say. I've never really played Battle Mode that much, but I can see the Battle Mode diehards thinking that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's Battle Mode is the best in the series, and you know what? I'll take their word for it.
Now, with all that, Mario Kart 8 having a decent lifespan on the Wii U and having a pretty good one on the Switch as well, you'd think it was time for this game to hang it up and peacefully retire into the sunset. You would think.
For the next few years, there wasn't a lot of activity, but regardless, Nintendo just kept updating this game, where they took out an offensive gesture from the Inkling girl. I have nothing to say about it, I just thought it was worth noting. There were other differences, but I think you find it boring if I sat here and told you about balancing changes, so let's just move on. For the most part, the updates via the next year were more or less just simple adjustments. But come June 25th, 2018, a day history will always remember, Nintendo would introduce Labo support.
Now, what's Labo, you might ask?
You know, I don't blame you if you already forgot.
Labo is basically a weird experiment that Nintendo tried to do in 2018, a year where they basically only had Wii U ports already, so
it was kind of not a good year.
Labo is basically Nintendo approved cardboard that you take out, build as various objects, and can subsequently play games with it, being tracked by the Joy-Con's IR sensors. Mainly what this did was bring the camera in a bit closer, and you could use either a motorcycle or the wheel and pedal. I don't own this, I got some footage from Ninja Star, but it's a nice little addition, and considering Mario Kart 8 Deluxe was selling like hotcakes, again, I appreciated them supporting the game still.
And what a good update to go out on, am I right?
A month later, Link was given a Breath of the Wild costume, and there were new vehicle parts from Breath of the Wild as well. Around this time, Zelda was definitely switching away from the more traditional Link of yesteryear, and Breath of the Wild was absolutely becoming the new favorite child. Looking at a game like Smash Bros., which also gave him the blue tunic. I remember around this time thinking, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, it's still technically going strong. Could actual DLC be on the way? And while nothing major surfaced for a bit, updates throughout the next few years still came out. But they were definitely becoming less frequent and less important. Fans would debate at this time what the future of the whole series would be. There was a chance Mario Kart 8 was on its way out as a whole. In fact, a new game was already out, Mario Kart Tour, released in September 2019 for mobile phones. I'm personally not a big fan of this game, but it's basically where Mario Kart's future seemed to be, as it would receive constant updates, and hell, it still does to this very day. And there were various side projects released during this time too. There was Mario Kart Arcade GP VR, which 5 people played, and Mario Kart Home Circuit, which 8 people played. And to tell you the truth, no one really knew what the future of the franchise was. It sort of felt like to me that Mario
Kart had become Nintendo's GTA 5, where they'd port the game to new consoles, give it some updates, but focus their efforts elsewhere to continue making money. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe also just took the series into unprecedented territory by existing at all. Previously, there'd always be one Mario Kart game on a console, and boom, that's it. But would Mario Kart 8 Deluxe count as the Switch's Mario Kart, or would 9 still be fair game? Well, extremely trusted news corporations that have never once lied in their life came out of the woodworks in early 2022 to claim that Mario Kart 9 was in development with a new twist and could be teased that very year. This is a life lesson in the realm of gaming. Anyone who says they're an insider is not. But hey, all eyes were on the next Nintendo Direct, which was in February that year. Lots of people put it on their Nintendo Direct bingo cards, and it was time to sit down and see if Mr. Insider was right.
This is the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass.
I think everyone took a collective L on this one. Insiders, Cardinal, you know, everyone. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course. 6 goddamn waves of 8 tracks apiece, my god. And we all said Mario Kart 8 was dead.
I didn't, technically. I mean, I hinted it might have been to build the, tension, but, I didn't say it was dying. I'll shut up.
This was more or less an incentive for the Nintendo Online Expansion Pass, which lots of people did not consider a value at the time prior, and it definitely helped a bit. And you could still buy this DLC individually. These were to be mostly composed of retro tracks from previous Mario Kart games, and later we'd find out that a decent number of these tracks, if not basically all of them, come from Mario Kart Tour, whether it was new to that game or just a retro track from that version. But there is one thing we have to talk about here. Looking at the preview for Wave 1, there seemed to have been a major shift in graphical style here. It definitely didn't look as good as the base game, and fans were in the absolute right to point that out. But there's always a caveat. I mean, this is technically a trailer, it's not the final game, and it could be improved.
Pokemon fans always say that too.
Well, Wave 1 would release the following month, and it looked... It's bad. Okay, it's bad. The grass was no longer textured and instead looked like a Microsoft Paint bucket tool. Models like trees and flowers looked out of the Wii era, and even when it looked fine, it was still just nowhere close to the impeccable quality of the original game. This sparked massive debates on Twitter, which has never happened before, and it seemed like people weren't able to come to a collective consensus on if these worse graphics were a big deal or not. Some people argued, who cared about low polygon models when you drive past them so quickly? And that's a good point. Technically, it doesn't really matter, but it is fair to be disappointed by this in comparison to the base Mario Kart 8, which had love and care put into every single pixel, no matter where it was. This reeked of a new development team to me, and probably inexperienced ones. With Wave 1, I personally had problems beyond the graphics, actually. The track selection was super mediocre. 3DS Toad Circuit, really? Was there a single soul asking for this to be in the game? I'm not opposed to the inclusion of tour tracks, to be honest, but the ones they picked here were just so boring. Tokyo Blur Ridge barely feels like it takes place in Tokyo. It's just like kind of a mundane road with nothing on it. Pac-Man World Rally had a better Tokyo track than this, and there were just genuine errors overall. Coconut Mall has a turn where 90% of the time I just see everyone crash into the wall. Originally, the cars didn't even fucking move, and the NPCs in every level were scaled to be ridiculously big. Paper audience members that were used in the base game when they were 10 miles away as an illusion were sometimes just thrown 3 feet in front of your face, and you can definitely tell. I mean, they're not even trying to hide it. Well, the good news is I would argue future waves were much better. The graphics were heavily improved for one. Now, occasionally you get another paint bucket green track like Rock Mountain, but there are some tracks here that I would argue almost look as good as the base game, such as Mario Kart 7's Rainbow Road. Whoever brought this track over deserves a raise. In my opinion, it might be the best Mario Kart track of all time, or at least top 5. I made that claim for a lot of tracks today, I know, but it can't help it. I love Mario Kart. So here's the thing about the Booster Pass. If Mario Kart Tour didn't exist, I can bet you with the certainty of 100 moons that they probably wouldn't have done it. Most, if not all tracks either A, are outright from Tour, B, debuted in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, only to appear in Tour a few days or weeks later, or C, the majority, are retro courses that appeared in the other games that appeared in Tour first, meaning they could just copy those assets. I think most Mario Kart fans are mixed on the whole ordeal, but here's the thing. Mario Kart's fun. Even when I think the choices are mediocre or the graphics are bad, we're still all playing one of the best racing games ever made, and on what feels like new courses at least. And as someone who hates Tour, the new to Tour tracks like Merry Merry Mountain, Ninja Hideaway, and even a goddamn Yoshi's Island track, they're always going to be new to me at least.
And it means I can keep up my streak of never playing Mario Kart Tour again.
And as said, the waves have only gotten better since Wave 1, and there have even been a few bonuses. In 3.0, Nintendo added an item selector, sort of the same system Smash Brothers have, so if you want to play a track with all super horns, legally nothing's now stopping you. And Wave 4.0 even started introducing new characters, like Birdo, and there's more to come. And that was never even advertised from the onset. It's very rare a company decides to give you more content out of the blue. We're not going to talk about each cup in depth anyways, as basically they're all retro tracks, and I think it would get kind of repetitive. My general opinion on the reused tracks, you know what, bring them on. Nintendo is making Mario Kart 8 Deluxe an ever-living beast. I mean, there's nearly going to be 100 tracks when all's said and done. And you might ask, why did I make this video when there are still 2 more waves to come?
I don't know. Felt like it.
Well, there's speculation nowadays that Nintendo could do another booster pass. This is based on the legal jargon that no one ever reads. In Wave 1, the bottom of the graphic says 6 waves to be released over by the end of 2023. And that didn't appear in Wave 4's trailer, which has fans thinking there's at least the possibility of content beyond the booster pass. Who knows when this game will die? I mean, for all we know, Mario Kart 8 has years ahead of it. If you asked me in 2019 if Mario Kart 8 had any sort of future, I likely would have called the police on you. So as someone who's wanted to do this video for years and years, it was just kind of time to pull the band-aid off, because maybe this game ends this year. In fact, it probably will, but maybe it goes on for another 2-3 years. GTA 5 has been ported to 3 consoles, and we still really have no clue when the Switch 2 will launch anyways. I mean, it could be 2025 for all we know.
Because the thing about Mario Kart 8 is, I just feel like this is the perfect racing game. I mean, what could they do in a Mario Kart 9 to really make it better? I mean, I'm sure there's things they could do, but I almost like the idea of just buffing this game up and just having it be one of the most content-filled kart racers ever created.
You might say under this logic, no new games would ever be made. Breath of the Wild was regarded as one of the best games of all time by many industry veterans and fans alike. And then Tears of the Kingdom came out, which I certainly haven't been grinding during the duration of this video, and therefore it's not on my mind in any sort of way. It's better in every way, in my opinion. Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild are open world games with hundreds of elements to think about. Where Mario Kart 8, you just kind of go zoom. In my opinion, if they do a Mario Kart 9, there's only one way to go from here, which would be Super Smash Bros. Kart. We've already started getting remnants of that, so I think at this point, you just have to fully embrace it, because not only would it be cool, we're probably not getting a traditional Smash game for a while anyways, and I think that's really the only way you could go from here. I'm getting ahead of myself though. Mario Kart 8 has in some way become a piece of me. It took me through my middle school years, it was there for me again as I worked my way through high school, and still was there for me and improving during and after college. It'll be nearly a decade since the first launch when the booster pass is fully completed. If you're around my age or a bit older, this game has been a huge chunk of time and point of consistency in our lives. In my opinion, this is one of the best games ever made. I don't think I would have said that when it came out in 2014. They built it to get there. So you know what? I hope this video becomes outdated. I hope we look back at this video in 2 years and say, silly Jeff, this game still had years ahead of it. JeffCompass is bad, confirmed. Just like life, just like my YouTube channel, just like anything, I want to keep seeing things grow. Long live Mario Kart 8 and its many lives. It's been more than a game. It's been an experience, and one that the gaming world was better off for having.